let's kind of recap a little bit. So yesterday we talked about Daniel. Um, oh my goodness, we read about Daniel um, coming into the service of Nebuchadnezzar, right? And we talked about how that happened, and then when he came into the service of the king, he stood up for what he knew wasn't right, right? And he made some change happen because he was bold and respectfully requested that his beliefs be respected. He didn't necessarily put it like that, but and I think that's actually something that we should identify, that we should point out, is that, we don't always, it doesn't always need to be phrased as, hey, you need to respect my beliefs, right? Like, that's not always the right way to approach it. It's kind of like that: meet people where they are, talk to somebody how it's going to make sense to them, right? And without obviously compromising the truth, of course. But with Daniel, he stood up for what he knew God was telling him to do, and he ended up making a lot of change happen, and then he was blessed immensely. So then he and his friends ended up being the ones chosen to remain in the king's service and be in the king's service. Okay. Um, I just realized I didn't even update this. So we pick up here with Daniel having just been put into the service of the king, and it was said that he had more wisdom and understanding than any of the king's other people, like basically like the astrologers, the magicians, like the seers, all that stuff. So God blessed Daniel with so much so much knowledge, and blessed him with a position, basically a position of power in this king's service, right? So that's where we're going to pick up. Johnny, yes, this is my blended chocolate pumpkin coffee. It's delicious. Delicious. I just have to drink it kind of fast, so bear with me. It tastes very pumpkiny though. It's great. Okay. So all right. So in Daniel chapter 2, right after all of that just happened, we're going to pick up here. And here's kind of our main point today. We can have faith that God knows the future and trust Him to handle our tomorrow. Oh, that is tough, man. And I think that's so relevant, especially like think of the prayer requests we just had, and think of everything that's going on right now, that it just feels like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. Like, how could God possibly be in control? It's so easy to fall into that. But this is a beautiful, beautiful reminder. We can have faith that God knows the future and trust Him to handle our tomorrow. Dang. I love that. Okay. So there's kind of our main point today, okay? And good morning, Johnny. I don't know that I actually said good morning to you. Sorry. Okay. Couple questions to get us kicked off here. Do you remember the panic surrounding Y2K? Oh man. Was anybody here not even alive at that point? I remember it. I remember they used to like I was pretty young, but I remember whenever we would go somewhere, there was always like these weird um good morning. Hello, legendary Hazel. We are just jumping into a study on Daniel chapter 2 right now. We're opening up with a very interesting question of, do you remember the panic surrounding Y2K? Um, yeah, Johnny, you might have been, I think you're a little younger than I am. So you were probably really young. You probably wouldn't remember. At least not much. But I remember they used to have these like little stuffed animals that they would hand out to kids all the time that said Y2K. Like they had like Y2K embroidered on them, right? And that's like the main thing that I remember. But I remember people panicking like crazy. And next part of this question is, did you do anything at all to prepare for it? I remember my parents like stocking up on like massive amounts of like dog food and massive amounts of like canned goods, and like our garage was like packed. We had like crazy like camping stuff, and like it was crazy. We were like stocked up on stuff because everybody was so afraid of Y2K, and they like it was just, you hear the radio was talking about it, and it was all over the news. And I remember it got pretty big, right? I'm gonna call you May. And hello, welcome. Nice name. Um, so if you were old enough to remember, did you do anything at all to prepare for it? Do you remember? Like, was it a big deal to you? I think it's funny too because, okay, if you weren't old enough to remember Y2K, it's really funny that we're in another situation right now where people are crazy, um like crazy preparing for, like, some I've heard some conspiracy theories of like, this is the beginning of the end times, this confirms the end times, like all these kinds of crazy stuff. And people like at the beginning of this pandemic were like stocking up like crazy, and it felt very similar to how at my age when I was really young, right? How I remembered seeing people act with Y2K. Um, yeah. Oh man, Mama Rednecks. I remember. Yep, yep. May I ask what was Y2K? Sorry for asking. Never heard of it. No worries, no worries. So basically, everybody was convinced that the world was gonna end. Like, that's basically sums it up. Like, everybody was just freaking out, saying this is a sign and that's a sign, and because of this and because of that, like all these different things, and like the world is going to end, and they were just so convinced that the world was just going to completely just fall apart, be destroyed, boom, we're done, right? Like it was insane. Um and like I said, like there's a lot of people now in this pandemic that are treat like at the beginning we're treating it very much the same, and it almost, man, like as we continue on in it, it's kind of feeling like what is even happening, and people are raging, and it feels very similar to how I remember it feeling with Y2K. It's just like, oh my gosh, the world is imploding, like it's all over, like we're screwed. Like, what? How are we gonna recover from this? But at that time, it was literally people really were convinced that the world was ending, and that was the big deal. And there was like massive, massive advertising, massive, political propaganda. There was massive, like I said, I remember like I had several of these little stuffed animals. They were almost like Beanie Babies. You remember Beanie Babies? They were like Beanie Babies with Y2K embroidered on them. And I had several of them. And whenever we would go somewhere, it's like they were just handing out all this Y2K stuff and like pamphlets and like all these little stuff. Was trying to get the kids even involved and like, be prepared. The world's ending. Like, what are you gonna do? And people were stocking up on, massive amount of survival gear. Like it was almost like people thought that it was going to be like worse than the apocalypse kind of thing. Like it was nuts, right? Oh my gosh. So, still living with my Mormon parents. It was business as usual. Oh, I can understand that, Mama Rednecks. So anyway, with that, Um, okay, so some of you remember it, some of you don't. Um, Alex, do you remember it? You're hanging out in voice chat. You're welcome to chime in on top of me.
I mean, I know what it is, but I don't really remember much about it.
Yeah.
I was pretty young at the time.
So, what is the craziest thing you have ever seen someone do to prepare for the future? We're talking about Y2K, people like going crazy. Even like right now in this pandemic, right? Like, I've seen some crazy stuff happening. Like the toilet paper thing, right? Like, why the heck did all the toilet paper get sold out like nationwide for like a while? It was so hard to find toilet paper. What the heck? I think that's like the weirdest thing in this entire pandemic. Like, why toilet paper? You know what I mean? Like, and I heard about somebody uh there's somebody at my grocery store that I shop at. Like, I just do pickup orders. But the lady, as she was like loading up my groceries, she said that the weirdest thing that she saw somebody like massively stock up on was like an insane, like basically sold out the entire inventory of canned spinach. What? Like, I don't even know what to say to that. Like that's cool if that's your thing, but like that's a lot of spinach. Like, why spinach? And why that much? You know what I mean? It was like an absurd amount. It was like a ridiculous amount of cans of this. It was like a pallet basically. Like one of those small little pallets, right? Filled with cans of spinach. Like, I don't understand. So what's the weirdest things, craziest things you've ever seen someone do to prepare for the future? Ooh. Overly done bunkers. Yeah. Hey, yeah, yeah. Bunkers come to mind. Yeah, man. That's like World War. Was that World War II? I think that was like a big thing. Well, they probably did it in both World War One and World War Two. Big old bunkers. I see. Yeah, I've my my dad used to like keep huge um tubs of survival gear. He's gotten rid of a lot of it now that he's older. Um, but he used to have like a garage filled with survival gear. And I was always like, that's excessive. Like, why do you need that much? But like as I'm getting older, I'm like, maybe that's not such a bad idea. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Overly done bunkers with all the supplies like war is coming. Honestly though, at the beginning of this pandemic, it felt like that. And at some points it's like, man, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's getting crazy out there. I don't think it's gonna come to war or anything, but man, TV show about people that make bunkers. Oh, interesting. I don't watch a lot of TV, but that sounds really interesting. You probably learn a lot of things from that. You're in the dressing room, are closed when you want to try unclothes, which is weird. Huh, that is weird. I mean, I guess I get it, but that's weird. If I had the money, I would live in one of those old missile silos. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Hey, Weapon! Weapon, you came in at a really good question. We're just jumping into our study and we're starting off with a couple of questions. Right now, we're talking about what is the craziest thing you have ever seen someone do to prepare for the future? Hey, Megan, good morning. To school to prepare for the future. It kind of feels like kind of feels like a waste now. Oh, that's terrible. Is the Bill Gates vaccine related to Mark of the Beast? Oh my gosh, I that sounds a little terrifying. I don't know what you're talking about though, I'll be honest. Okay, so then the next question, you can keep discussing that, but the next question is how do you prepare for the future? So, we talked some about like what are the craziest things we've seen people preparing for the future. What do you do to prepare for the future? Farming? That's fantastic. A weapon? You don't want to know this one? Uh-oh. Um, so I mean, I think we just do kind of the normal stuff of like, make sure that we've got, things put away and we have, we're not just living day to day, or whatever. Just we take measures to prepare ahead, but like not super insane, keeping in mind that God is in control, like just kind of let God guide that. But I don't know. I feel like we just do normal stuff, you know? I do push-ups to prepare. You do push-ups to prepare for the future. Hey, that's actually, I know, I feel like you're probably trying to be silly, but but seriously, like taking care of your body is absolutely a great way to prepare for the future. Like I'm trying to take better care of my body to prepare for the future. That's very accurate. Um I am more careful with what I eat to prepare for the future, right? Because again, health, right? I try to be more nutritious. We try to make sure that we have a stock of like first aid supplies and like meds and things that we might need when we get sick. Um, things like that. Gonna deny that one. um, oh goodness. Yeah, what? But I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. Legendary Hazel to focus on God more in the future. Oh, did I miss a? Oh no, I didn't. Okay. I literally can't. God has us on a trust me and see thing for like ever. Morena, I totally know the feeling. I feel like that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, all right, God, like you'll tell me when it's time to do, you know, whatever. Like you'll let me know when it's time, So some things we stock up on, and some things we prepare for, and some things you just don't, right? Like you just let God just tell you when, right? Um, what about if the electrical grid goes down? Well, I mean, I guess, I think it's probably a good thing to have some provisions for that, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't feel like where I'm at I need to be excessive about it. Like we've got candles around and flashlights and, things like that. We've got things to cook with if we need to. That's where I think like that's where I think like um my brain just derped. It fell out. Camping stuff. There we go. Camping stuff. Keeping a good inventory of camping stuff is smart because then, if you end up needing, you know, insulated warmth or you need the camping stove or, whatever. Um that's really smart to have on hand, right? My brother has started a reptile collection in hopes that if there's a nuclear war, he can have an army of Godzillas. That's awesome. Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. And I bet you he's totally serious about it, isn't he? That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay, last one for the moment. How does the way you invest your time, money, and resources for the future demonstrate your faith and trust in God? Ooh. So, how you're preparing for the future and how you invest in your preparations, how is that demonstrating your faith and trust in God? Is it? Right? I know several of us said something about, right? He's definitely dead serious. That's awesome. Several of us have said, something along the lines of just, giving it, just trying to give it to God and let Him guide the different ways, right? And that absolutely is a good way to demonstrate your faith and trust in God. I think when we go excessively overboard, that's when we're trying to take that control for ourselves, right? When we don't let him guide and we just like obsessively try to collect things to try to prepare and tell ourselves that we have any sense of control over that, you know? Wanted to clarify that are we referring to the future as in end times or just the future in general? Future in general. I know it kind of set it up as an end times feel, didn't it? But yeah, just future in general. I think right now it's a really weird time to kind of be thinking about that as like we opened up with Y2K, but our pandemic right now feels very very similar. You know what I mean? Like, man, it's crazy right now. Preparing for the future demonstrates a lack of faith in God. If I had faith in God, I would do nothing and allow my faith in God to handle my entire future. Uh, I would have to disagree with that because we need to make sure that we are leaning on God and doing what he tells us to do. So if God tells us to prepare in a certain way, right? Then we need to obey that. We need to do that. We can't just like, "Oh, I'm just going to sit here and just wait for God to just do what he's going to do," because it takes us acting. It takes us actually participating. It takes us doing the work, making the choices to obey God, right? It reminds me, Alex, of the story that you keep telling, right? You want to tell it one more time?
Uh, what, the one about the flood?
Yeah.
Um, there's a guy who's stuck on the roof of his house during a flood, and he keeps calling out to God, God, please, help me. And so, a boat comes along with a guy in it, and he says, "Come with me, I'll get you out of here." And the guy on the roof is like, "No, no, I'm waiting for God to save me." And so the guy's like, "Okay, fine." And he goes on and gets out of there. Then a helicopter comes by, and they're like, come with us. We'll get you out of here. We'll save you." And again, the guy's like, "No, I'm waiting for God to save me." And in the end, it's the realization that God was sending him help the whole time, but he didn't realize it as like another form of God coming to help him. That God was sending that help.
Exactly. And it reminds me of Noah. Like, God told Noah, build this big, huge freaking ark, right? And not only that, but like also get he'd specified the animals and the people, right? That were gonna come onto the ark with him. And God told him, this is how you're going to prepare for the future, right? And he had to actually do what God told him to do, right? Shouldn't I wait for future instructions from God? Also, if I do not wait for God's instructions, how can I confirm I am working towards what God wants? How much time should I waste working in the opposite direction of God? Well, you don't want to waste time working in the opposite direction of God at all, but you need to be seeking God out. You need to be constantly seeking him out. Don't just like sit there and wait for him to approach you. You have to be seeking him out and approaching him every single day. And through that relationship building and through that communication, he will open up to you what he wants you to do, right? That's why spending time with him every single day, spending time in prayer, spending time in his word every day is so, so vital, right? We should be talking to him every single day so that we can hear him and we can better understand what he wants us to do. The closer that we get to him, the more time that we spend with him, the more that we learn about him, right? The tighter that relationship with him gets, the better able we are to hear him and and understand what he's telling us to do, right? And trust him as well. That's a big factor. Um, yes, and exactly, Mama Rednecks. We are to talk every day with God. That gives us a relationship that guides us. And I also, what you said before, think of the parables of the talents. God expects us to act on what He gives us. Absolutely. Johnny, that's a good point. I think preparing the way God wants us to prepare is important. God calls for wisdom, right? He gives us the wisdom that we need, and we need to use it. We need to apply it. But we need to be seeking it. We need to be seeking him and seeking out what he wants us to do, right? And he may not be obvious when he speaks to you. Keeping all senses open helps a lot. Absolutely, weapon. Absolutely. And the more that we open ourselves up to communicating with him, the more that we open ourselves up to receiving, his communications back in whatever form he's going to communicate back, right? So, absolutely. Okay. So, some people have bomb shelters, weapons stockpiles, and Twinkie stashes as their fallback plan for an uncertain future. Most people have emergency funds, saving accounts, 401k plans to prepare for what lies ahead. The way we prepare for the future demonstrates where our faith lies. If we place our faith only in wealth and money as opposed to God, we are not prepared. Just as Daniel did in Daniel chapter 2, we must place our faith in God, knowing that he will handle tomorrow. Okay? I want to sit and talk, but I gotta go to work so that I can get paid in the future. Exactly. See? Action. Action. You gotta go to work. That's cool, dude. Have a great day. Thanks for the questions and thanks for the input and hanging out with us. Hope you have a wonderful day, dude. Alright, so we're gonna jump in to Daniel chapter 2 here. We are in the voice chat if anybody wants to jump into the voice chat with us. If you're not in the Discord and would like to be, do exclamation Discord in the chat, and you can get that link. If you want to hang out in the voice chat, you're more than welcome. I also welcome you and remind you that if I just keep talking and you would like to chime in, you're welcome to interrupt me. Okay? All right. We'll go ahead and jump in here to chapter 2. Now, in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and somebody corrected me yesterday, Chaldeans, I think, to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king, and the king said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. When the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever, tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, My decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. Well, that's encouraging. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. They answered again and said, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time, because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, There is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this reason, the king was angry and very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, Why is the decree from the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time. that he might tell the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision, so Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Pause. Okay. So again, we see, first of all, Daniel again stood up and was like, hey, I trust my God, and I trust that he will tell us what we need to know, right? So he stepped up and he was like, no, 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 don't kill me. Let me give it a try, right? And then he sought God out. And not only that, but he brought his companions into it, and they all sought God out to find out what was this impossible thing, right? So, a couple of notes here. Let's see. So, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So, yesterday we talked about timelines and how sometimes they don't appear to match up. But here's kind of some explanation here. Nebuchadnezzar's dream took place in the second year of his reign, which might appear to conflict with the claim that Daniel's 3-year training program began in Nebuchadnezzar's first year. However, by Babylonian reckoning, Daniel's second year of training occurred during what was considered the first year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Oh yeah, because of the accession year. Therefore, the king sought interpretation of his dreams in 1602 BC, shortly after Daniel had completed his 3-year education. Okay. So basically, the people that the king was trying to get to interpret his dream, or what you would call soothsayers, they basically just they act as astrologers and magicians and stuff. But I mean, clearly they're just really trying to, earn a high position and just tell you what you want to hear. In verse 5 it says, the king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. Some versions translate the phrase my word is final as the dream is forgotten. It is better to translate it as referring to the certainty and finality of the king's demand. Nebuchadnezzar withheld the facts of the dream not because he could not remember them, but because he wanted to test the wise men. That's a really interesting and important point, is that different translations will have different wording in a variety of areas. And here it's really important that he points out my decision is firm. He's saying he absolutely is very clearly testing the wise men to see if they can actually do what they claim to be doing, right? Whereas in some translations, I'm reading out of the NKJV right now, but in some translations it will change the wording to make it sound like if you can't do it, then it's just going to be forgotten. The dream is going to be forgotten. That takes away from what we know about the character of Nebuchadnezzar, right? It's not that he's going to forget, it's that he is very firm in what he is threatening. This threat is an honest threat, right? And that's really important. It tells a bit about who he is, but that also tells about the risk, the actual risk of Daniel's life, Daniel and his companions, right? It shows that they are truly at risk of death if they can't interpret the dream without the king saying anything about it. And then in verse 11, where the Chaldeans are saying, it is a difficult thing that the king requests. There is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. It says this candid confession by the wise men admits that despite all their incantations, magic, and astrology, they were not capable of receiving supernatural revelation. And so they admitted that, right? And they didn't believe that it was possible for them to receive any, you know, supernatural revelations. They were not actually going to be able to interpret this dream unless he told them what it meant. And then they would just guess, right? Exactly. Revelation comes from God, and they flat out they recognize that. And they recognize that they wouldn't have been able to reveal that, right? But then later we see Daniel is like, challenge accepted, right? Challenge accepted. God is the only one that can reveal this. Well, I'm going to seek my God out to reveal this, right? They use dark powers to achieve what they want. Exactly. And Nebuchadnezzar takes everything to I kill you if you don't if you don't give him what he wants. Exactly. And that point right there, that little bit of translation that's very important to make sure that you're reading the right translation, right? So you can see the seriousness of what's going on there. Oh my gosh, my headset is rubbing on my glasses again. It's driving me crazy, guys. Oh, can't do it. Yes. Okay. And then oh yeah, and then this says too, wiseman is a general term for all the king's counselors who gained their knowledge through occult practices. So, like you said, Mama Rednax, through dark powers. It was not God honoring. And remember, it was a pagan kingdom too. So they had, different gods that they believed in. And that's what they would go to try to gain knowledge and power, really. Um, so of course Daniel and his friends were subject to execution because they were in the class of wise men. They had not participated in any of the discussions with the king, though. So they were included, right? They had been put at, a kind of on a pedestal with the king, right? In chapter 1, he said, they were 10 times better than all the wise men that they already had, right? And so that's how they got included in that, because God had opened them up to knowledge and wisdom. Okay. Okay, Alex. No worries. Okay. All right, and then how did the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans respond to Nebuchadnezzar's request? What happened when they could not tell the king his dream? And what did they have faith in? So, I mean, they flat out were like, this is impossible. We don't have the power to do that, right? So because they couldn't even attempt to translate or to interpret the dream, and they had to admit, like, we don't actually have any real power. The king then ordered all of the wise men to be put to death because they said that no man can translate, no man can interpret, right? It was only up to God. Um, and they didn't have faith. I mean, they really didn't have faith in anything at that point. Like, if you're flat out knowing that you're gonna die, and you flat out are like, yeah, there's no way. Like, there's no way. I can't. Nobody can interpret that. No person can interpret that, right? That absolutely was. They lacked faith in really anything, even themselves. They knew that they were powerless. What is the point of having wise men if they can't ask for directions? No joke. And that's a great point too, because what did Daniel do? Right? Daniel stepped up and was like, "Hey, wait, right? Like, let me check in with my God. You're saying only God can reveal this. Well, let me check in with my God, because my God is powerful, right?" And he checked in with God. Um So the magicians, sorcerers, and other wise men placed their faith in themselves, but even then they lacked faith in themselves. They believed they could interpret the dream, but found themselves in trouble when Nebuchadnezzar would not tell them the dream. They did not have the power or the ability to know the king's dream, so he promised to kill them. Yep. So they didn't have faith in their own ability at that point. Okay. Okay, gonna jump forward. My God is the only God. Exactly. Exactly. Alright, so then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So he sought God out, was like, hey, give me a chance to seek out my God. Give me a chance to interpret this without knowing what the dream is. And he did. He sought God out, and God revealed it to him. Okay? And so what did he do, though? What did Daniel do immediately? The secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. It was revealed to him, and he immediately praised God. He immediately gave the credit to God. Right? Immediately. That right there is a great example. Man, something good happens. Thank you, Jesus. Like, you know what I mean? Okay. And then he said, Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the hiccup. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness. Oh, excuse me. And light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand. Okay? So, he immediately praised God, right? God revealed the secrets to him. He revealed the dream to him. And he immediately gave praise. He didn't take the knowledge and immediately go to the king, right? He didn't go and immediately be like, see, like, my God did this, and I know, and I know, and I know. No, no, no. He didn't take the credit for himself. He didn't go and immediately, act on it. He immediately praised God. He took the time to stop and pray and thank God. That is important right there. That is important. What would have happened to Daniel if he could not discover the king's dream? He would have been put to death, like point blank. Had Daniel approached his uncertain future, what must Daniel have believed about God to make an appointment with the king? He flat out immediately trusted God with his uncertain future, right? Daniel immediately, he knew that his life was in danger, but he didn't freak out. He immediately took it to God. And as soon as God responded, he immediately praised God. Right? And that needs to be our first response. Our first response needs to be take it to God and keep taking it to God and praise God. Right? Take it to God first and then praise him when something happens. Right? Praise him anyway. Praise him always. Praise him in all things. So, what did Daniel do when he had an uncertain future? When he had uncertainty, like, of death facing him, he immediately took it to God and trusted God to give him what he needed. And he did. And then he praised him before doing anything else. Okay? What did Daniel do when God revealed the dream? He praised him. How do you respond? How do you respond when God works in your life? Is that your first response? Is your first response to praise God? Right? Got something on me. Is your first response to trust God, to praise God when he works something out in your life? leave that question sit with you for a second, and we're gonna stop and do our morning prayer. Okay, we see that in Job too. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Job is one of my favorites. Okay, so at 9:11 a.m. we stop and we pray, and we just lift our nation, our world, and everything up to God. So we're gonna stop and do that real quick, and then we will continue on. So if you guys want to pray with me real quick here. Dear Lord, thank you so much, God, for this study. Thank you so much for everybody who's coming in and out today. God, I want to lift our nation up to you, especially in our world and everything that's just raging and going on. And it's like every time our world thinks that there's a solution, you show us that we again are not in control. We are not in control, but you are, God. And I just pray that you guide us and you help each of us to navigate life. Help us in our day to day. Help us to adjust to change. Help us to be part of a positive change for your glory and your kingdom. And help us to participate in this life the way that you call us to. God, help us to be an example of you in this world. Help us to take a page out of Daniel's book here and be like him. God, I pray that you be with us, that you guide us, that you give us strength, that we hear from you, and that we have the courage to stand up and say something when we need to, in the way that you need us to, and that we are obedient to you in everything that we do. God, I pray that we seek you out deeper every single day. And God, I just thank you so much for calling us into your family and calling us your own. And Lord, just everything that you do for us, everything that you provide, everything that we have, God, I just thank you so much for all of it, and I lift it all up to you. And I just pray that each of us does with whatever you've given us what you call us to do with it. Where you call us to be generous, help us to be generous. Where you call us to be brave, help us to be brave. Where you call us to serve, help us to serve. Whatever it is that you tell us to do, Lord, I just pray that you fill us up with whatever it is that we need, and you push us so that we can and we will do what you call us to. Do what is necessary in us, through us, so that we can be transformed and we can transform the world around us as well. And God, I just lift our entire world up to you, and I just pray that you just be with us, heal us, and help us as we are broken. And God, only you can fix us. Only you can heal us. Only you can make us whole. Without you, we are empty vessels. But with you, you just fill us up with everything that we lack on our own. And Lord, I just thank you so much for that. And I pray that you just continue to fill up your people and encourage us every single day. And encourage each other. Help us to encourage each other every single day. Lord, and just thank you so much for all that you do and whatever is ahead. And Lord, just help us to keep on trusting you, or maybe trust you for the first time with an uncertain future. Help us to recognize that you are in control of all of it. Thank you so much, God, for everything that you do, all that you provide. In your name, amen. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so move on a little bit here. How do you respond when God works in your life? What do you do when God does something for you, right? Put that way over there now that the alarm's off. Do you throw a party? You get excited? Do you go and tell somebody about it? Do you do anything? Or is the very first thing that you do when God works in your life to praise Him, to thank Him for it? Right? Exactly. In the moment, sometimes we focus on the thing rather than being thankful. Absolutely. And that's exactly what we need. That another heart check item, right? Are you immediately thankful, or are you focusing on the thing, right? If God shows up in your life financially, do you immediately go and spend it, or do you thank God for the blessing? When God shows up in a relationship, do you absorb yourself in that relationship more immediately, or pull yourself away immediately, or do you just give it to God immediately, right? So many different areas. Sometimes we focus on the thing instead of the thanks, right? And it's really important that we recognize how we respond, so that we can make sure that we are immediately being thankful, and we are recognizing, earlier we were talking about um, how the deeper into your relationship with God that you get, you are able to hear him better, right? You can see him more clearly, you can feel him more clearly. And when we get closer and deeper in our faith, right, then we can recognize a little quicker when God is doing something in your life, right? And you have a better instinct to lift it up to him, right? I think it depends a lot of times on the situation, like how deeply does it affect us and what is our gut reaction. Yeah? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And um that again though, that is very much, focusing sometimes we still, that's a mentality of still focusing on the thing, the situation, whatever it is, over thanking God. Because it's kind of a situational thing. Oh, well, it feels big, so I'm going to lift it up to God. But if it feels small, well, God deserves all of our thanks. And we need to make sure that we're lifting every single nitty gritty detail up to Him. Good, bad, and otherwise, right? Right? Like, it might be easier for me to say thank you, Jesus, for fixing my car than thank you, Jesus, for healing my child. Yeah? Absolutely. Absolutely. Or sometimes vice versa, right? Sometimes vice versa. Sometimes, oh, well, I just took it in to get an oil change. I did that. Or the mechanic did that. Like, thank you, mechanic. God gave you the resources and the opportunity and the connections and the funds or whatever to be able to do that, right? Thank you, God, for giving me the opportunity to get this fixed, right? And sometimes we give credit other places instead of giving the thanks to God. And does that mean that we shouldn't thank other people and appreciate other people for their part in that? Of course not. Like, we need to be appreciating other people, but God gets the praise first because He's the one that made that all work out, right? And like, thank your doctors, or a surgeon or whatever, but recognize that God was in control of that, right? God is in control of all of that working out, how it works out. Give Him the thanks first, and also appreciate the people that are involved. But God comes first. God comes first, right? God gets the thanks first. He should get the thanks first. Okay? So, just like the wise men, Daniel faced death if he could not tell Nebuchadnezzar his dream. Daniel approached his perilous future by having faith in God to reveal the dream. When God revealed the dream, Daniel worshipped him. That needs to be our instinct, our reaction as well. Okay? Again, we're going to read the next section here. Therefore Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king, and said thus to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah, who will make known to the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. Oh my gosh, I can't even. Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets and has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living. But for our sakes, who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. Oh, I totally misread that. But that's why I stopped. I got confused. But as for me, this secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living. So he's not taking the credit for himself, right? He's not taking the credit for the wisdom. He is saying, this isn't revealed to me because I'm better. This was revealed to me because for our sakes who make known the interpretation to the king, and that you may know the thoughts of your heart. So he's saying, God's letting us interpret this for you so that you can know what this dream means, right? So, Daniel asserted that no pagan soothsayer, no pagan worshiper could solve the mystery. Nobody could reveal except for God. He was very honest. And he even said, like, even I can't do that on my own. God revealed this, right? This is God in heaven is the only one that can reveal this. None of these guys can reveal this, right? And he didn't take the credit for himself. In the last days indicates that the king's dream would find its complete fulfillment only in the end times. So it's indicating that his dream was about end times. Let's see. So again, where did Daniel give credit for the ability to discern dreams? He gave it right to God, the God of heaven, right? Why did Daniel give credit to God instead of keeping credit for himself? Why would Daniel give credit to God instead of taking the credit for himself? Which is difficult to do at times. When you come up with the answer, you get a little proud of yourself, right? Right? And he totally could have done that. He totally could have done that. So why would he have given the credit to God and not taken it for himself? Right? He didn't want to be prideful. Daniel's not a prideful person. He recognized that it was God, and only God was able to reveal that. Only God was able to do that, right? In this case, he's witnessing to Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. How often do you give credit to God? Kind of like what we were talking about a minute ago, right? How often do you give credit to God? Do you take the credit for yourself? Do you give the credit to somebody else? Or do you give the credit to God? Tell you, if you find that you have trouble staying humble, tell you, practice giving all the credit to God whenever something happens. You know? Not as much as he deserves. Yeah, Johnny, I feel you. I feel you. Hey, Sparky! So we are reading Daniel chapter 2. Gosh, I know I'm like stretching my arm out. I feel like I slept weird on my arm. It's been like really tight. Ugh, it's annoying. Okay, so in Daniel chapter 2, I'll kind of catch you up a little bit. talking about how God revealed to Daniel the dream, right? Daniel is giving credit to God. He immediately sought God out. He immediately praised God when God gave him the information, gave him the wisdom, right? And then he immediately gave God the credit. So he sought God out immediately, right? Took it to God immediately, gave God praise immediately after receiving the information he needed, and then immediately gave God the credit. How often do you do that? How often do we take it to God immediately, praise him immediately, give him the credit immediately? At all, even. How often do we do that? Right? Not very often for most people. Even if you've got some pretty solid faith, it's still hard to give God the credit, to give it to God immediately, right? Yeah, human nature absolutely goes against that, and our culture goes against that. Our culture is a gold star, right? Oh, you get a gold star, and you get a gold star, and you get a gold star, right? Good job. Like, no, I'm sorry, that's God. That's all God, right? I don't take any credit for what I'm doing. It's all God, and we need to have that attitude in everything that we do, right? Whew, excuse me. Daniel approached the king with confidence because of his faith in God. Daniel proclaimed that God gave him the knowledge of the dream. He did not seek credit for himself. Daniel knew that it was the work of God that had revealed the dream, and he trusted in God, not in his own greatness. Yup. All right. You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found, and the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation of it before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand and has made you ruler over them all. You are his head of gold. You are this head of gold, sorry. You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, you will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, as an iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. Okay, let's break this down a little bit. Okay. Daniel's God-given ability to interpret visions and dreams served him well in his role as advisor to King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, a man noted for his mysterious and troubling dreams. The following brief comparison of a dream of Nebuchadnezzar and a dream and vision of Daniel reveals a common theme in the book of Daniel: the successive rise and fall of four kingdoms. Okay, so let's break it down. An image with a head of fine gold, and then later on, Daniel has a dream of a beast like a lion with eagle's wings. And that is said to be Babylon would establish itself as the first world empire. Okay? And the next part is an image with a chest and arms of silver. Daniel's later dream is a beast like a bear with 3 ribs in its mouth. And then he also has a vision: a ram with 2 horns, one of which was higher than the other. And then the interpretation is Medo-Persia would defeat Babylon and establish itself as the second world empire. Right? To quote the Jungle Book, don't start that again. Oh man. Love talking about this topic. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? An image with a belly and thighs of bronze, a beast like a leopard with 4 wings, a male goat with a large horn, later replaced by 4 horns and a little horn. That is, Greece would defeat Medo-Persia and establish itself as the third world empire. An image with legs and iron, or legs of iron and feet of iron and clay. A beast with iron teeth and 10 horns. Rome would defeat Greece and establish itself as the fourth world empire. Sound familiar? So, let's break it down a little bit further here, okay? Okay, so where it says, where is it? There's a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. So what does that mean? The latter days is an expression used frequently of the end times when God will intervene in human history to establish his eternal kingdom. Okay? And then where it says, behold, a great image, this great image whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. It's important to recognize that this is not an idol. It is a statue. So in other words, it's not like, in their culture, idols were like statues of quote unquote gods that they would worship, right? They would worship the idols. It's not an idol, it's just a statue, right? That's important. Especially if you see another translation that interprets it different. That's an important distinction, especially when it's God is revealing this, right? So why would God say, "Oh, there's this big idol in your dream"? Like, that ain't gonna happen, right? Jesus is the stone made without hands, whose kingdom is a mountain that stands forever. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So, actually, the next thing is, without hands signifies supernatural activity, right? So it's saying like God is going to intervene here. In biblical imagery, a mountain is often a metaphor for a kingdom. The same is true in this case, as a later interpretation makes clear. God has given you a kingdom. The God of Israel is the God of all nations. Although the rulers of those nations may not have recognized him as Lord, that did not nullify God's ultimate sovereignty, nor did it alleviate the ruler's responsibility to him, right? So just because somebody is in power and doesn't believe in God doesn't mean that God didn't put them there, right? God puts everybody in the positions that they're in. Excuse me, whether they believe that God's there or not, whether they believe that God put them there or not, God put them there, right? It's not God only works for those who believe in him. God only is in control of those who believe it. God's in control of all of it. So whether you believe he's there or not, whether you believe he's working in your life or not, he is. Flat out, right? And that's why in other areas of scripture we see, you know, basically tells us, respect authority. Respect your leaders because God put them there, right? One reason or another, sometimes it doesn't always make sense, right? But God put them there for a reason, and he's using them there. And we need to respect that, right? So for Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel was telling him, God put you here. God made you king. God gave you this kingdom, right? That's pretty bold to say to a pagan king, especially, right? That you're standing in front of and you know that if he doesn't like your interpretation, he's going to kill you. And he's telling you, God is giving you this information, right? God is interpreting this. God gave you this dream. God's telling you what's going to happen. God made you king, and God gave you a kingdom. You may not believe in God, Mr. King Nebuchadnezzar, but I do. And this is what my God is telling me. Right? That's pretty dang bold. Pretty dang bold. So the head is a reference to the Babylonian Empire, personified in Nebuchadnezzar. And then, so kind of breaking it down one more time, the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw represented 4 kingdoms that would rule over all the earth. The first worldwide empire, the head of gold, was Babylon. The second empire, the chest and arms of silver, was Medo-Persia. The third empire, the belly and thighs of bronze, would be Greece. The fourth empire, the legs of iron, is the only one not identified within the book of Daniel. Rome is the most likely choice, for it succeeded Greece. Strong as iron, the focus shifts from the value of the metals to their comparative strength. The Roman Empire was marked by strength, but it was destructive strength, right? And then it talks about the kingdom will be divided. This may be a reference to the fourth kingdom, the Roman Empire. Differences about what is meant by the 10 toes and the kingdom that filled the earth has resulted in widely varying interpretations. Some believe that these verses point to future events that have not yet been fulfilled. In this scenario, the Roman Empire will one day be revived, will be ruled over by 10 rulers, will feud over internal problems, will witness the return of Jesus Christ, and will be destroyed by Christ at the second coming. Interesting. Especially, this is really interesting too because, and I'll be honest, like I didn't even think about this before, but in these interpretations, it's talking about, Daniel is saying part of the interpretation is that this is about end times, right? And so the dreams are apparently giving us a little hint somewhere in there about what could be ahead of us, right? Because he didn't say the end of Nebuchadnezzar's time or the end of his empire, the end of his reign. He said the end times. He's talking about the end times, right? And we have to remember too that God's timing and our timing are not the same. So this this interpretation of saying that some believe that the future events have not yet been fulfilled Could very well be the case, right? There's a recent archaeological discovery that proved Daniel's interpretations were made prior to their fulfillment. Yeah, I love seeing stuff like that. I super love seeing stuff like that. I love documentaries. I think I watch probably more documentaries than actual shows anymore. Okay. And then, of course, it references the kingdom which shall never be destroyed is the kingdom of God. Duh! There are at least two views as to what form this kingdom will take. Amillennialists, oh my gosh, suggest it is a spiritual kingdom introduced by Jesus Christ at his first coming. Premillennialists suggest that it is a literal kingdom to be established by Jesus Christ at the second coming, at which time he will destroy the kingdoms of this world. Reference Revelation 19:15. Your God is the God of gods. One should not conclude from Nebuchadnezzar's confession. Oh, we aren't even there yet. Just kidding. We're going to skip that for a second. Okay, so. Okay, break it down here. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. He wants the wise men to interpret it. The wise men that came to his aid said, no man can interpret this. Only a God can interpret this. Okay? So Nebuchadnezzar says, alright, y'all gonna die. Daniel says, whoa, 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 give me a chance. And he seeks God out immediately. Seeks God out. God answers, he praises. And then he goes and he tells Nebuchadnezzar and he gives God the credit. Okay? So he brought it to God, he praised God, he gave God the credit. Even though he absolutely could have been killed for it. Like in this situation, you really think about it, he absolutely could have been killed if Nebuchadnezzar was just like, nope, that's dumb. Like, I don't believe that. You're dead, right? But he, out of faith, trusted God and gave God the glory, gave God the credit, gave God the praise, brought it to God immediately, trusted God to bring it to him instead of feeling like all is lost, right? He trusted God with it. Okay? So then, he tells Nebuchadnezzar what his dream means. And he's telling him, you know, this is God, this is from God. God is telling you this. God is telling me to tell you. And this is what your dream means. And he breaks it down and says that his dream is a prediction or a prophecy, a vision of what is going to happen in the future, right? So then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and incense to him. The king answered Daniel and said, truly your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Also Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Hot diggity dang, guys. So, this is absolutely an incredible example of how trusting God can have some incredible results. I feel like so often, like how often do we say, oh, you know, I know that person. They're not going to change their mind. They're not going to react positively. They're not going to like what I want to tell them. They're not going to listen. How often do we find ourselves feeling like that? Oh, well, you know, it's not going to do anything if I It's not going to do anything if I speak up. Me saying something won't have any positive effect. Oh, well, that's not what they want to hear, so they're not going to listen. You know, all the different variations, all the different things that we say, and we guess at what people are going to say. We guess at how somebody's going to respond, when really we need to trust God with it. Say, all right, God, you're calling me to have this conversation. I'm going to have the conversation. And I'm going to give it to you and just trust you in this conversation. And that's exactly what Daniel did, right? That is exactly what Daniel did. He didn't let an assumption of, oh, well, Nebuchadnezzar is going to, he's not going to like what he's going to hear. He's not going to believe me. He doesn't believe in God. So he's not going to believe me. And so he's just going to end up killing me anyway, right? So why should I even bother? All is lost. He's not going to believe me. How often do we do that to ourselves? How often do we do that about others? Exactly, Bomber Rednex. We allow what we think what we think another is going to say when what we are is thinking is sinful in nature. We need to remember that assumptions. Oh, I love this. My other half, he likes to say this. Assumptions are the sum of all mess ups. Except for sometimes it's not as nicely put. Assumptions are not a good thing. Those are dangerous. Assumptions mean that you are not trusting God. Yes, I like that. Assumptions make a donkey out of you and me. You know, when we assume what somebody else is going to do in response or say in response, first of all, we're not giving them a chance. But second of all, we're not giving God the opportunity to do his work. We're not giving ourselves the opportunity to trust God to work in that situation. Right? We are not trusting God to work if we are assuming that we know what's going to happen. And the same is true for the future. Oh, well, you know, I'm going to be real. I'm going to be real for a second here. You ready for it? Well, you know, I'm not going to get COVID. So, screw it. I'm not going to, I don't need to do anything. It's alright. This is all just, it's all just conspiracy. Right? I don't need to do anything. Or the opposite. I need to prepare, right? I need all the toilet paper. I need all the canned food. I need all the things. I need to just bunker down and I need to just do every single thing, and I need to just I need. No, 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 no. Do you trust God? Have you brought it to God? Have you brought it to God? And if you brought it to God, did you listen for him? And did you listen to him? Did you watch him work? And did you give him the praise? Did you give him the credit? Are you trusting God in this pandemic? Are you trusting him, and are you actually obeying him? Are you trusting him in a sense that, oh, well, he'll protect me, so I could just go out, I could just do whatever. I could just go about my life like I normally do, and God will protect me. God will protect me. It'll be fine. Sorry, but God tells us to act, not to ignore. He tells us to act. He tells us to take the precautions that he sets in line for us. And this is not just a pandemic, just in general. Exactly. Act with wisdom, with God's wisdom, not your own. Like, let's be real clear there. Not your own. Just because you think, you believe in something about your situation, are you believing what you want to believe, or are you believing what God's telling you? Right? I mean, point blank. Daniel is a fantastic example. Boil it down. Break it down. Think about how Daniel would act in our situation. What would Daniel do? Daniel would give it to God. Speak up where God wanted him to speak up, respectfully, lovingly, correctly, with wisdom granted from God. He would praise God for the work that he knows God is doing. Are you praising God for what he's doing in your situation? Because I promise you, even if it feels like things suck right now, there is so much good to be praising God for. Don't discount that. Don't ignore that. Don't ignore that. See the good that God is doing and praise him for it. And give him the credit. Every nitty gritty little detail. Right? We need to have more grace with ourselves, with each other, with God. We need to stop trying to take the reins. We need to stop acting like we have any say or any control. And we need to stop being freaking lazy or super obsessively controlling. I see a lot of both extremes, and trust me, I've been guilty of both of them. That is a loud airplane. Trusting God does not mean that you sit and do absolutely freaking nothing. That means you listen to God. You seek God out. Seek God out and do what he tells you to do. When he tells you to do it, how he tells you to do it. That doesn't mean sit on your butt and wait for miracles to just pop up in front of your face. I mean, if that's what he tells you to do, then you do that. But if he tells you, take this precaution, prepare for this, prepare this way, do that, right? Because he will tell you what to do. Then you need to do that. Just like the story. I love that Alice keeps bringing up this story about the flood, right? Because that is us. How often are you that person on the roof saying, oh no, it's okay, just keep going. Just keep going. God will come. God will come. He'll do it. When really all he needed to do was get in the boat. He needed to move. He needed to act. He needed to participate. Right? He needed to choose to participate. It's hard, and when we don't, God will and does step in. Yes, and trust me, you don't want to wait until God has to step in and push you. Right? You don't want to have to wait for that. That's like the conversation of discipline last week. Have the self-discipline to get off your butt and do what needs to get done, right? Like, it was a brutal reminder we all need. Have the self-discipline. As unloving as that sounds, have the self-discipline to get off your butt. Do what God is telling you to do. Otherwise, God is going to have to come in and discipline you himself. Because you're not listening. You're not doing what he's telling you to do. That's when things get really uncomfortable. Or downright painful. Because we aren't listening. We aren't doing what God's telling us to do. We're expecting him to do all the work. And sometimes that's what's needed. Sometimes we need to just shut up, sit down, and let him do all the work. But sometimes he's going to say, you need to do this. Life is not to be a potato. Life is to be a vessel, to be used by God. And it takes action. It takes choice. It takes seeking God out, praising him always, giving him the credit. Do what he tells you to do. Just like Daniel. Right? Potato, exactly. The most humbling times I have had always are when I am weakest. Yeah? Yep. And you know what, too, though? Remember that when you feel like you can't do it on your own, you're not wrong. But that's not a bad thing.